Okay, using their spare legs.
Exactly.
Assuming, that might make an ass out of you. I mean, I'm pretty sure the Bay Area stats.
Well, what happens when you say, I presume? Then you make
presume instead of assume?
Yeah. Welcome to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host. Here's our format. A bunch of guys sitting around a bar. There's no bar. Having drinks. There's no drinks either. But we're talking business, and you, the audience, are listening in. The Best of Investing is actually a radio show that has been around since August 2010, and it airs every Saturday on Fox News Radio, 9:10 a.m. at 1 p.m. Now, we're not a political show. We're strictly business, so everyone will be happy with that. Remember, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. Are you ready? Let's go. Exciting finishes in sports is because we have a very special guest, a very good friend of mine, Paul Kingsman, who is the 1988 bronze medal winner in the 1988 swimming Olympics in the backstroke. And if you go on his website, which is still active, Paul Kingsman.
Very active.
Very active. Okay, very Paul, active. Like that. PaulKingsman.com. You can see one of the most exciting swimming races, to me, of all time.
Thank you.
Okay, and Paul.
Yes.
Give us I've heard the story a few times, and so has Mark, but it gets better and better each time, and it's been a little over a year since you've been with us, and we have a lot of new listeners, so give us the story.
The story behind the medal?
Yeah.
Well, there was 13 years of training for a 2-minute event, and I ended up winning a bronze medal by 4/100ths of a second. So it's a long time to train, and I hit my goal time of 2 minutes, and I ended up winning that by a fraction of a second. So.
Well, let me ask you, if you would have known that it was 13 years for 4/10ths of a second,
no,
4/100ths of a second,
yeah.
would you still done it?
For a gold medal.
For gold medal, not for bronze.
yeah. I'd do it all again for gold medal. Well, anything for gold medal.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard that. I've heard that a lot of people do anything for the gold.
Well, some do, and some get caught.
Some get caught.
Yeah, right. No, but there was actually a question that they asked Olympic athletes. They said, if we could guarantee you a gold medal, but you were going to die, like within 2 weeks after, would you still want it? And they said yes.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things with a silver medalist, I've heard people say, well, silver medalist is really the first loser. So third place is actually better than second.
That's what I've heard.
That's what I believe.
Go big or go home, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul, 4/100ths of a second, that almost sounds like the margin of error. I always wonder about that, and how accurate are the start versus finish times in something like swimming. You got water and you got all kinds of stuff going on. And
good question, because that's why they can't go down to the 1,000th of a second, because of the margin of error in pool construction. In 1984, we had a dead heat in the first event, the women's 100 freestyle at the LA Olympics. They can only take it out to the 100th. If they went out to the 1,000th, they would actually see a difference. But because of even disparities in engineering, they can calibrate the length and everything, but they cannot take the times to the 1,000th, although they know them.
Well, you hear all the steroid type stuff, right? Well, the next thing's going to be someone's going to get in the pool with a hammer and chisel out part of the pool, make it a little bit longer.
Yeah, right.
That'll be in Australia. New Zealand, you watch.
Are they notorious for that?
Oh, Australians are notorious for all bad stuff.
Really?
But I'm a New Zealander, so...
Oh, that's right.
So take my word for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not the Aussie, but the Kiwis.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure, Mark, what question you want to ask?
Paul, what are you doing with yourself today now that you did that? I mean, that 13 years training, and where did that lead you to, post Olympics?
Sure. Well, I'm speaking a lot to corporate groups, mainly in the financial services world, which I got into when I came back to the US at Morgan Stanley to start with. So doing corporate speaking, and also working with a small wealth management group called Taddy Ludwig. And it's because of that perspective of knowing the importance of having a long-term plan and how to stick with it. And as you said, I did that for 13 years, and it's the same with finance today as far as setting goals and objectives and having somebody to track, help you track.
Well, I think one of the things that you've talked about is distraction, as I remember. And if you give us a little story about the distraction of the fourth place finisher, I think that'll...
and I never noticed that. In fact, I was talking to a group earlier this week, and never noticed what was the cause of that until several years ago, and saw the guy that came fourth on the last couple of strokes actually turned and looked at me. And if he hadn't have looked at me again, he would have come in ahead of me. but he looked once and saw me, and that was enough of a distraction to look again.
Did you smile at him?
No.
Stick your tongue out?
You never look for the wall.
Yeah.
I mean, you just never look for the wall. But he did, and in that split second, we were only 4 meters away from finishing. In that split second, a lot changed. So, oftentimes when I'm showing the video, people are like, oh no, he looked as like, what are you feeling sorry for him for? It kind of changed lives, but, that's what life's like. You can't get distracted.
You can't take your eye off the ball, or in this case, take your eye off the pool.
Off the wall.
yeah, off the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if he's gone through. He hasn't committed suicide or anything.
No, a number of people have asked me if we ever spoke, and we never did, because they take the 3 medalists away, they take the other 5 guys out the other side, so we never had a chance to talk.
Yeah.
And depending on what country those losers are from, they might get beaten up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, or killed. Yeah, I remember.
Isn't that amazing?
In soccer. All right, we're going to come to our first commercial break. We're in the studio here with a good friend of mine, Paul Kingsman, 1988 bronze medal winner in the backstroke for the country of New Zealand. And here's our first trivia question, and again, it's exciting finishes in sports. Joe Carter, who, by the way, I met, who was a very nice guy, still built like a steamroller. There we go. Joe Carter hit one of the most dramatic walk-off home runs in World Series history in 1993. Who was the pitcher? That's the question. Who was the guy who gave up the pitch? And we will be right back. Well, welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hoff of Pacific Private Money and Brian Burke of Praxis Capital. And we're also in the studio here with Paul Kingsman, a good friend of mine. And when we cut to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question. Joe Carter hit one of the most dramatic walk-off home runs in World Series history in 1993. Who was the pitcher? Anybody?
Blank stares.
Mitch Wild Thing Williams. Mitch Williams for
the Wild Thing, yeah.
yeah, for the Phillies.
That's right.
Okay. I think that's probably where they get from Major League. Wild Thing.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking of, the Wild
Yeah.
Thing from the movie Major League.
Charlie
That's right.
Sheen.
Charlie Sheen, exactly. Okay, Paul, tell
Definitely
us
Wild
of now. Okay, now you had really now he's really wild there.
Yeah.
Okay, in life. Okay, so it was very exciting, dramatic in a good way. The Olympics. Now take us 2 years later, where it's a little bit more of a sadder story with the Commonwealth Games. Sorry to put you on the spot like this and bring up these memories, but hey,
That's
gotta
okay.
make good radio.
Are there tissues around?
Yes, there are.
No, we had the Commonwealth Games 2 years later, and because of my swim in 1988, I was very well known in the country. Had 3 TV commercials going at the time, and no one had come near my time, but had been distracted. Had gotten distracted, and relative to what I speak about on distractions, it's often the obvious things that sound good that can be the biggest distractions. And so made 3 TV commercials, went traveling around a lot, promoting the bank I had done those for, but it was a deviation from what got us there in 1988, and I paid a price. I swam the heat in the morning and came back that night, and all through the day knew I was in trouble. Things just didn't feel great in the morning. I was walking into the pool that night actually, and had a lady come up to me and tell me how much she'd saved because they could only afford 3 tickets to come and watch, and they were coming to watch me win gold and coming to watch me perform for New Zealand.
Because remember,
coming
I
to hear the anthem.
don't think the audience knows this, is that the Commonwealth Games were actually held in New Zealand.
Commonwealth Games were held
that
not
year.
only in New Zealand, they were held in my hometown, about 5
pressure.
minutes from where I live. So yeah, no pressure at all.
Very
So
convenient,
they were very keen to see the gold medal, and I came second. And a Canadian came in ahead of me. And he connected
Canadians.
with, I know, and he comes back to me on LinkedIn about 4 months ago, and I assumed he wanted to be friends or whatever. And
Did you ask him for that money?
No,
we
I'm
just
trying to
wanted
find
to rip you again.
I'm trying to find his address.
I want my gold medal.
I got a really good baseball bat.
It's just time for a rematch.
Yeah.
So no, I came second that night, and it was a tough one.
But what was the big distraction? Because wasn't the Super Bowl going on at the time?
We had Super Bowl that day, and I can admit this now because I'm older and we all make dumb mistakes, but got into watching that day. I was, because coming from Cal, 49ers were big news, and I was a 49er fan, and instead of resting, which I always did, especially in major meets between heats and finals, decided to just relax and watch the 49ers play instead of rest.
It's not too resting. I mean, there's too much excitement going on with the 49ers.
Oh, it was a great game. Yeah, I can't remember how many that won at that stage, but yeah, it was a great game, and it was a way of having. It was just a way of feeling connected to the guys that I knew up here at Cal, and yeah, it was February 1990.
Wow. And Mark, you wanted to ask about the public speaking.
So Paul, you go into public speaking after that, and this is more of a question that I'm curious of, because I'm starting to do public speaking myself, and I'm finding it a little bit challenging on the preparation side. What did you do to prep yourself when you got into public speaking? How did you?
Yeah, that's a good question, because typically what people will do is they'll watch people, and I've watched a lot of people, and still do, because you always learn from them. They'll watch people like Steve Jobs, and they'll always say, "Gosh, they make it look so easy," but it's actually from practicing. They practice and practice, and there are certain lines that you're looking to bring out in a relaxed, spontaneous-looking way. And people will often say, "Yeah, I mean, you're so natural at it." It's like, no, it takes a lot of work. But one of the tougher things is the entry barriers to speaking are low, as far as anybody can get up there, and so there's a lot of clutter out there. So it's finding those the key things that people are wanting to hear about, and then a very simple structure in the talk.
Well, it's funny because most people say that they'd rather die
than
actually speak publicly.
Speaking publicly and wearing Speedos, two of the top 3 things.
Come on.
True. I've done it both.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Apparently that's the case.
Well, it's interesting when you're talking about preparation for public speaking, because that's something that I've always, I've been doing some of this myself lately too, Mark, and what I've read and what I've learned and I've found to be true is that you actually start practicing for your speech when you're born, and your whole life events all culminate into making that speech. So all of the things that you did when you went to the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games and all that give you material to use in your public speaking, because it comes across so much more naturally when you're drawing from your own personal experiences, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that's right. And it's got to be valuable to the audience, though. A lot of people will stand up there and they'll just rattle off a load of things that they've done.
Right.
It's got to be relatable to the audience. They're sitting there thinking, so what? And you've got to be answering that question with content.
And so it's not necessarily that the content needs to directly relate to the topic, but you need to know how to relate your story to the topic and connect the dots for them.
Absolutely.
So how can you relate swimming to business and fix that synapse together? I think that's what draws people in and makes them interested.
Being the distraction.
Yeah.
Right,
so
exactly.
I'm talking about distraction proof. That's where we're coming from. And as soon as you tell that to somebody when they say, "What do you speak about?" I speak about overcoming distractions. The immediate response is, "Oh boy, I could really use that." And that's the exact response I'm looking for.
Yeah, see, the only preparation in life I have is preparation H. But at least I can relate that to the audience.
Yeah, that mentally for us is a big distraction. Thinking about that.
Distractions nowadays are just that's a major thing for me. And in the last year, I've found myself doing certain things to help my productivity with regard to eliminating distractions. And some of the things I did, for example, I turned off all the notifications on my phone. I don't get beeped every time I get an email on my cell phone, and then I get the same email on my desktop, and you can turn off those notifications, and then I've got my cell phone actually, the only notification I get is my cell phone actually goes off. It beeps every hour. But that's an alert for me to kind of pull back, stand up, walk around, and go, okay, am I working on the most important things that I should be focusing on today, my vital functions?
Right.
So the distractions.
I didn't think I had enough distraction. I had to sign up for your junk mail.
Right. Yeah. That was my newsletter.
No, good stuff. Okay, this second trivia question, we're going to cut to commercial break, is that kind of almost right up your alley there. With 34 seconds left, Joe Montana threw the winning touchdown to which 49er in Super Bowl 23? Are you going to be able to answer that one?
Yeah, I really don't care, Edward. It was the 49ers in Montana I was watching that led me to...
Cost you a gold medal. I'm sorry
so
about
Montana
that.
still owes me. If you're still listening, Joe.
We will be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hunt of Pacific Private Money, Brian Burke of Practice Capital, and our guest, Paul Kingsman, 1988 bronze medal winner. And when we cut to the second commercial break, we asked this trivia question. With just 34 seconds left to go, Joe Montana threw the winning touchdown to which 49er in Super Bowl 23? Yeah.
Oh.
John Taylor. You remember that one?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's
You're
what
just thinking about it. Well, I wasn't a super. Mark, we received an email from an interesting listener here. It says, "How do you protect your investor from a fraudulent borrower?" That's a pretty darn good question.
on that money, which is fabulous, but still it is their life savings or their IRA monies, and they want to know that they're going to get paid their monthly interest as promised, and that they're not going to have trouble and have to go foreclose, because generally most of my investors really don't want to own that real estate. They just want to make the return that they can by making a loan to a real estate investor who's going to make a profit on that property. So, so what we do is we always do a credit check, no matter what. And I have a few borrowers that complain about that. And I said, look, this is what we do. We don't make loans based on your FICO score, but I want to know what your credit profile looks like. I want to know what kind of...
Not 15 judgments against you.
Right. Collections.
Have a history of getting loans and not paying
or
back.
You're late. The next thing we do is we do the credit check. I also do a background check. I've got access to the same type of facilities that private investigators can. It costs a lot of money and you have to qualify for it, but we have that at Pacific. So we do a background check based on their name, date of birth, social, and all that. So that tells us stuff that wouldn't appear in a credit report.
Like he's a convicted felon for financial fraud.
Yeah. Well, no, that's exactly
These are the kinds
right.
of things you'd want to know.
We have discovered some very interesting things that have caused us to pass on certain loan applications.
We denied your loan, but the police are on their way.
And then the other protections that are part of making a loan they're essentially the same protections that Bank of America has when they make a loan to you on your home. You get there's a recorded deed of trust. There's title insurance by a title insurance company that is insuring your first lien position on that property. There's hazard insurance with the lender's name on it. So a lot of our lenders do lend in their personal name or the name of their IRA. So there's a deed of trust in their name. There's the hazard insurance in their name. There's the title insurance. So there's an awful lot of protections. It's one of a lot of people believe trust deed investing, as they call it, is one of the best kept secrets in investing today. Because 8 to 10% is a fabulous yield to get for what many consider to be a very an investment with safety and security features that are much stronger than a lot of investment opportunities out there.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
If people want more information, they should go to my investor website at Pacific Private Investments. That's plural, pacificprivateinvestments.com, or go to the Best of Investing website and click on Pacific Private Money there.
Very good. And Brian, we got an email here from someone who asks, have you ever purchased a property and had a negative surprise? What did you do in that circumstance?
That's a good question.
You drive up and, whoa, there's no house.
Right. Yeah, that could happen, I suppose. For the listeners that don't know what I do for a living when I'm not giving Mark and Edward a bad time on the radio show, I'm the managing director of Praxis Capital. We're a real estate private equity firm, and we purchase and rehabilitate and either resell or rent residential real estate in Northern California and a few other states as well. So yeah, after having bought about 400 or 500 houses, there's no way you can do that without having a few surprises along the way. And I have a
mother-in-law comes with the house.
Well, we've had a few. I've had people living in the attic. That was an interesting one. I always say that there's really no such thing as problems in business. They're all just classified as expenses. So you just really have to figure out how much.
It still costs money.
Everything is just how much is it going to cost to fix it.
That's true.
And it's no different in real estate investing. You get out to the house and you find that the termites ate the floor out. That's an expense, and you'll have to account for that. And maybe you didn't know that going into it. And I think that's one of the important reasons why investing, especially if you're buying houses at foreclosure auctions, where you don't get the opportunity to do a complete inspection of the house. You don't get an opportunity to do a pest report or a professional home inspection. So it's a business that isn't really for the faint of heart or for the inexperienced, and it's one of those do not try this at home kind of businesses. And after having done a few hundred of them, you get pretty good at identifying those surprises before they materialize and in addressing them when they materialize. And it's not an if, it's a when.
Well, and I went to a presentation you did years ago, Brian. I think it may have been the first time I heard you speak, and you were showing a bunch of before and after photos of properties that you had rehabbed that you bought at the courthouse steps.
Yeah.
And the one that got the audience in stitches was before, there's a house. After, it was a lot of dirt.
A vacant lot.
You didn't have those pictures backwards, right?
That's right. Yeah, and then I had an after where we had built a brand new duplex
true.
on the property. So eventually it looked pretty good. But
How much did you buy that property for?
oh, I think we paid about $40,000 for it, and this was back in 2005 when when the peak of the market. A lot was worth $100,000. So we knew we couldn't lose even if we had to tear the house down. And unfortunately, we got there and found out we did have to tear the house down. There wasn't anything salvageable. But at the end of the day, we built a great duplex on it, and it made a great profit on it as well.
So it was still profitable.
Oh yeah, it did. Yeah,
I guess in
we
05,
made
maybe-
quite a bit of money on that one.
I wonder if that would be profitable today. Cause that's
No.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't, because the problem today is there's no way you could actually construct a structure like that for less than you could sell it for, and that's the problem.
that's the
And I think
problem,
we'll
yeah.
get into that in the next segment of the show.
Yeah.
Is the disconnect between the cost of constructing real estate or real property now versus its value, and there's a big disconnect.
They still haven't come back from that. Welcome, you're listening to the Best of Investing on News Talk 910, and for those of you listening for the first time, here's our format. A few guys sitting around a bar having drinks without the drinks, talking business with you, the audience listening in. I'm your host, Edward Brown, and I'm pleased to have as my co-host Mark Hanf of Pacific Private Money, California's fastest growing private lender, and Robert Spinoza of RPM Mortgage. And today's trivia theme is comedians. Thought it'd be a little funny today.
Great.
Our website is bestofinvesting.com. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube by typing Best of Investing Radio Show. Also on television, Comcast Channel 26 on Saturdays at noon and Sundays at 6 p.m. And today's special guest is Ronnie Moore, who is an accomplished speaker, author, and media guest expert specializing in spoken and written communication. She has a book out called Why Did I Say That? Ronnie, welcome to the Best of Investing.
Thank you. Hi.
Hey, Ronnie, Mark Hanf here. I got the first question for you. I love the title of your book, Why Did I Say That? With the subheading, Communicating to Keep Your Credibility, Your Cool, and Your Cash. Of
Right.
course, I think your cash being the most important part of that. And so you write in the book about communication issues when dealing with people like car dealers, contractors, and other people whose sole goal is to get our money as quickly as possible. What are some of the primary communication issues?
There are two that I think are most helpful, and one of them is to always remember the interest of the person you're talking to. In other words, even though people are friendly is not friend. To be a great person, but you're not there to make a friend. You're there to make a transaction, and don't confuse friendliness and ingratiation and we're so much alike with the fact that their goal, their interest is to get the money out of your hands and into their hands. And when you realize that, you take better care of yourself. That's number one. Number two, is that often we find this more in women than men, and I hate to do that to my own gender, but it's not because we're less than, it's because we're raised differently often. We reveal too much. We talk too much about our lives, we talk too much about our weaknesses, and we don't think enough. So we need to think more, talk less.
So is it a mistake then to be overly friendly with salespeople? I ask that question because even though I'm not a woman, certainly I think one of the things that I tend to do a lot is to maybe talk too much in a transaction and be maybe even overly friendly with people I do business with.
Again, I think that it hurts women more because often there's a confusion between friendly and friend. If you are friendly and social, male or female, and you can develop good rapport is often a great foundation for good professional transactions. But again, there is a difference between friendliness and friendship.
You know, sometimes I know going to the gym and just trying to be friends, if I'm trying to just be friendly with a woman, she has a different idea of why I'm trying to be friendly. I'm not trying to pick her up. I'm just being friendly.
That's another issue, of course. But I think if I'm thinking about it from the buyer's side, if I'm the woman buying a car or dealing with a contractor, I have to remember that he or she can be very nice to me and friendly and perfectly lovely. But clearly, at the end of the day, I'm the only one taking care of my money.
Yeah, that's right. You're in control of it.
Ronnie, Rob Spinoza here. What's the one thing we should always communicate in these type of transactions? Can you narrow it down or crystallize it into a single thing?
Yeah, I can. And there are a number. I mean, I have a whole chapter on this in the book. But the one that I always tell people to do whenever possible, and I'm going to clarify that in a minute, is always say you're going to get another bid or estimate, and always do, unless. A few years ago, my roof caved in a rainstorm. I really wasn't in the position as I stood in the water in my house to play games and say I was going to get another bid.
Right.
It's really not a game. I mean, if you're going to invest in something that's at least 4 digits in price, I think it's worth 10 minutes to get another bid.
Yeah, you always have to be careful of the impulse buying and, today only.
Yeah, and I do think that there is, I certainly respect that in my transactions. If somebody calls me and says, hey, I'm working with someone else or I've consulted someone else, I don't take any offense by knowing that, although I do know that there are individuals in my industry who do, and it will end the conversation or get offended and huff off, and that's that. So
Good for you. I think that's really a great way to look at it. Ultimately, what troubles me sometimes is that often that's when you get your best price and you don't have to get another estimate.
Right.
And that is sometimes troubling because I want to say to the vendor, the salesperson, or the contractor, why couldn't you have given me that price right away?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, here's a question for you: is that what is the one thing we should never communicate in these transactions?
Yeah.
Good counterpoint.
Desperation. I
absolutely have to have this today. What's your best price?
I think that, I'm in the market for a new car. And I'm not a car person per se, but there's this really pretty car that I like, and I went in, and I broke all the rules.
Right.
The color, it's so beautiful. And, I had to step away because I realized that nobody would take any negotiating I did seriously because I was too desperate for that car. I think another thing we should never do is reveal things that are too personal. I think that we should save the personal for the personal relationships. And small talk in the business world should be limited to non-taboo topics, the weather, sports,
Sure.
I
don't know, sports in my house can be a little almost like politics, but I know.
So you are a bad fan.
Yeah, that's right. When I go, it's funny, when I buy a car, my attitude is always, listen, I'm doing you a favor by getting it off your lot so you don't have to pay interest on it, so how much below cost can I get?
Right.
And then it's like, I don't care whether I get the car or not.
Right.
Even though the car is breaking down.
This is not revelation, what I'm about to say, but it's worth saying again, which is you're only successful when you communicate through a negotiation when you know you can walk away. And the other person knows you can walk away.
Yep.
If your roof is caving in, as mine was literally, and I'm standing on my wall-to-wall carpet in 4 inches of water, clearly I'm pretty desperate. But other than that, I should be able to walk away. It's just a car, and if the roof is sound, it just needs some replacement at some point. You have time to get another estimate, and you have time to walk away.
See, unfortunately, me, I would have scotch taped an umbrella to the roof and just said, I'm not desperate.
Get a better price.
Yeah, get a better price, exactly.
I like the water.
Yeah.
Do we got time for one more?
Tell you what, we're going to cut to our first commercial break. We're in the studio here with Ronnie Moore, who wrote a book called Why Did I Say That? And for the first person who calls and asks for the book, go ahead, give us a call. Actually, you have to email me, edward@bestofinvesting.com, and say, please send me the book, Why Did I Say That? And then I'll forward that on to Ronnie. Okay, the first trivia question, and again, the theme is comedians. Okay, which comedian often says, I don't care who you are, that's funny, and get her done, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my co-host Mark Hanf of Pacific Private Money and Robert Spinoza of RPM Mortgage. When we cut to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question. Which comedian often says, I don't care who you are, that's funny, and get her done? Mark, you know the answer.
Well, no, I'm not familiar with those quotes, but I'm just guessing. Is it like Larry the Cable Guy?
It is Larry the Cable Guy from the Blue Collar Radio.
I just keep seeing his picture everywhere, and it just sounds like something he would say.
from Prilosec, I think it's what he's
Not a bad impression, though.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we're also in the studio here with Ronnie Moore. Ronnie, we're going to ask you some more questions.
Okay, sounds good.
So Ronnie, who wrote the book, Why Did I Say That? Communicating to Keep Your Credibility, Your Cool, and Your Cash. And so, love the topic, Ronnie. You talk about in your book overcoming the need to be liked, and this is a big one for me.
Me too.
What can you elaborate on this a bit?
I can, and I refer to that as it applies to primarily when you are spending your money, but it's also true at work. It's wonderful to be liked, but if you try to be liked by everyone, everywhere, and you sacrifice your own best interests all the time, you're not going to like yourself. And at the end of the day, the only person who's going to be there with you when you put your head down is you. So it's really hard, especially I was raised where, you know, as a girl, I was raised in a very traditional European family, and I was taught that I couldn't be direct, I had to be nice even to people who were not nice to me, and I was always feeling icky all the time. So now I try to do both. I try to take care of myself and be as nice as I can be, but ultimately I have to choose, I have to take care of myself.
Well, you know, you hear the term, you can't please all the people all the time. You end up pleasing nobody.
Yeah, and then the other
Right,
thing,
and you end up very tired.
I think there's another element to that of this, and that's time. And one of the things I've learned in my profession is that there is a time to be liked after you do or provide a great service, and people come to appreciate, trust, and like you. At that point, you know, you've earned it. But to obtain it up front can, like you said, sometimes be very, very time-consuming and ineffective.
And why are they liking me up front? Is it something I earned?
Right.
Or is it a manipulation? And I couldn't agree with you more. It's wonderful when you do a great class or give great service or do your job well and someone likes and respects you. That's the best way to be liked, right?
I figured I came up with this phrase. That is that honor is given, but respect is earned.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you make that up? think I've heard that
did.
before.
No, I actually did. I'm with that phrase.
Hey, Ronnie. So, what was the motivation for writing the book? Why Did I Say That?
I mentioned before to everybody that I had a roof cave in and I was looking for a roofer. And after that, I realized that there were probably a dozen examples, whether it's when you have to spend your money or deal with your spouse or deal with a difficult boss, number of things. I came up with about a dozen typical challenging communication issues we all deal with both personally and at work, and each one is now a chapter in the book so that I can give you insight and you're in this situation, what'll work, or at the very least what won't work, so you don't waste your time.
And so this is your second book, right, Ronnie? You also wrote a book on the written communication. Is that true?
I did, thank you. A couple of years before this one, I wrote a book on how to avoid common mistakes when you write, everything from fewer, less, affect, defect, to making sure you don't depend on your spell check and send something. We've all been there. You send something out, you thought spell check got it,
Well,
and then you're mortified.
yeah, Ronnie, I was going to say that I'll bet part of this has to do with making sure that you don't hit the send button when you're angry. You know, you got to reread
I talk a lot about writing offline.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually have a fake email address I use when I'm angry with someone, so I put that in the send box.
Wait a minute, so you're the one who's been sending me that stuff.
You know, it's interesting. I love this topic because I can't believe how few people actually write and communicate well. I mean,
I agree with you, Mark.
You know, it is amazing, and in my business, you know, I attribute a lot of my success to having better than average communication skills, both written and spoken. And so, but I'm just amazed at that. I don't know if it's an issue with public schools or what it is, but
Would you like to know the most common reason now?
yeah, I would love
That'd
to.
be great.
It's all those little machines that everybody carries where they no longer can have the patience for anything more than 4 words in a row.
Well, I talk good, but I ain't write so good.
They don't write so good. I mean, unfortunately, handheld devices, as convenient as they are turning people don't even have the patience to read a paragraph anymore.
Well, I've noticed that we've been trending in this direction of poorer and poorer communication, written and spoken skills, even before what is now, you know, almost endemic with society and having.
We're talking texts.
Talking
LOL.
in texts, I know, right?
You know, in
So it's only getting worse.
Where you can break up, end a marriage, fire someone over a machine. That's a pretty sad stage. So we're constantly connected, but we're more disconnected than ever.
Ronnie, I'm going to jump right on that because I was going to say, what do you think is the key communication issue in interpersonal relationships? Because I think you're getting at that right now.
The other day when my husband texted me from upstairs, I think we have an issue.
Well, you know what's funny is the communication. I think people get lazy. I mean, when it used to be like, you know, how are you doing, and it's what's up, and
Right.
then now it's just sup.
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 Right. Or when I write an article, as I do for different magazines, and they say, and we love the way you used to write, but could you just, basically they want me to write captions and pictures because nobody reads paragraphs anymore.
Yeah.
So what's the primary communication issue at work?
Well, there are a number, but the one that I think for me is most prevalent because it's harder to note is what I call stealth communication. It's, you know, somebody at work is obviously nasty or difficult. As hard as that is, at least you know what you're dealing with. But stealth, many different forms. I'm going to give you one. It's people who don't like to really confront the real issue and give mixed messages.
Oh, yeah.
One example is something I call group blame. It is an example in my book where I talk about a boss who has a staff of 10. He has one person on that staff who's late all the time. And instead of communicating effectively about the problem with the one always late employee, he sends emails all the employees about how we need to be on time.
It's the Office Space. Anyone see that movie where he's, you know, everything's communicating it through payroll that the guy's been let go? Well, he'll stop getting a paycheck and he'll know.
That is one of many forms of stealth communication, and it's really, I mean, think about it. The people come early and stay late. Think of how demotivating it is. They know exactly who that message is meant
Sure.
for.
Well, you know, and then you mentioned about the pictures and less communication. So I think I'll revert back to my Harold and the Purple Crayon book. Good. Thank you very much, Ronnie.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that was insightful. I appreciate
Absolutely.
that. Okay, and now we're going to go to our second commercial break. And here's the trivia question for that, for the famous for comedians, right? What famous comedian used to say, "Now take my wife, please"? Now, you have to go back in time for this one, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my co-host Mark Hoff of Pacific Private Money and Robert Spinoza of RPM Mortgage. When we cut to the second commercial break, we asked this trivia question. What famous comedian used to say, "Now take my wife, please"? Robert, who was that?
That was Henny Youngman.
That was Henny Youngman. Very good.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to get right into email time here. And Mark, the email we received for you is, if I invest with you, do you collect the monthly interest payments or do I? You may have to kind of go in background to.
We make real estate loans to real estate investors, normally to either acquire real estate to buy fix and flip, or maybe to acquire rental property. And so that's a niche lending market that we serve in Northern California. And we use the funds of private individuals to fund those loans. And so generally one lender will fund one loan. Our average loan size is about $200,000. The range of sizes is anywhere from $75,000 to as high as $1 million. But by and large, we do about 10 to 15 loans per month, and the average loan size, as I said, about $200,000. And so I have dozens of clients, actually quite a bit more than that, but Bay Area residents who love to earn higher rates of interest by funding a real estate secured loan. And so the average interest that our clients earn starts out at about 8% for about a 12 to 24 month term loan. And so, I am a licensed real estate broker, and our company has all the required licensing, and we draw up loan documents, we manage the escrows, and our clients then fund those loans after the loan documents have been signed by the borrower, etc. So we also service the loans that we originate. And what servicing means is we invoice the borrower for the monthly interest payment, and it's usually an interest-only loan. That's usually what a hard money loan.
And do you send monthly invoices to them, or you send them coupons, or how does that work?
Well, it's usually coupons in PDF form in an email. We don't necessarily, although some get invoiced and some don't. we have different levels of loan servicing, but generally speaking, we're invoicing the borrowers, and the borrowers send us their interest payment. We process that by putting it into our regulated trust account. We take a small fee off the top and then send the rest to the lender, the investor, once the check is cleared.
And after that fee, they're getting 8%.
After the fee,
So that's
they're
net to the
getting
investor.
a minimum of on average of 8%. And so we also do other things. We track to make sure the insurance policies on the property are current. We track real estate taxes, whether they're being paid. And we also send out 1099s and 1098s at the end of the year.
So
Let
that's a
anyone
nice-
think that fee is going nowhere.
Yeah, exactly.
There is
Yeah, that's a nice
certainly-
service.
yeah.
Well,
Right,
the fee is, the fee really that we earn for loan servicing is deferred compensation. And what I mean by that is that we charge some origination points on loans up front, but that number, excuse me, has been reduced over time as the markets become more competitive. I mean, hard money lenders 10 years ago would typically charge 5, 6, 7, 8 points. I
Right.
mean, it was really, really expensive money, and normally the people who were borrowing that money were in high distress. Whereas today, the private lending industry is really serving that niche of the market that the banks don't serve. And in fact, we'll talk with Rob a little bit later about just how picky the banks have become when it comes to lending their money. So banks aren't making loans generally to real estate investors. We're filling that niche,
Right.
and the price of money, while still expensive privately, expensive compared to bank lending, has come down. So we are lending money out more and more in single-digit rates instead of the 10, 11, 12, which used to be prevalent years ago. And the cost, the fees have come from 5 to 4 to 3 and sometimes 2 points. So really and it really depends. I don't really have a pricing grid per se for the loans we do because it depends on the borrower.
Each loan's different.
Yeah, every loan's different. What's the loan to value? What's the borrower's profile? What's
Right.
the property profile? So in any event, the answer to the question is yes. We service what we originate. So
But it's kind of nice though. You do, like you said, you'll follow the taxes, the insurance, and all that. So,
Yeah.
so the investor is just passively just clipping
Right.
coupons.
Right.
Okay, Robert. Here's an email that seems right up your alley.
Okay.
If I use you as a mortgage broker, do you watch the daily interest rates to help me lock in at the best time?
I do. In fact, I watch throughout the day. I'm watching the prices on the MBS, mortgage-backed securities, and those will dictate to us when our lock desk might reprice for better or worse, depending on market activity. So obviously, just like with the stock market, intraday there's going to be a lot of volatility depending on economic updates or any economic news or anything geopolitically that might influence the markets. Well, that stuff's going to trickle down, and traditionally people used to look at the 10-year Treasury note, and I think that they always thought, follow that, and that's where rates will go. But there's been a disconnect on a lot of days between that and the mortgage-backed securities.
That's
So
why
I'm
it seems like
watching
it's
that.
much more important to use a broker now rather than just go to the bank. I mean, my bank would kind of try to help me, but it would be like, yeah, we watch it on a monthly basis. you
Yeah,
know?
those days are over. I mean, if you're really looking for the best rate and you're looking for the best outcome, like I think is also important. Good people who do what I do well are minding that with and managing the risk, just like an effective investment advisor would manage the risk to your portfolio. So too does an effective mortgage professional watch the market relative to your scenario. Because your situation or your escrow may play out over 60 days,
Yeah.
45, 60 days. And if you get a novice and he locks you in for 30 or 45 days, well, what are you going to do with that hangover where you're going to need to extend your interest rate lock, possibly at your cost?
So, Rob, I heard you say that you're watching the rates, I guess the intra-day rate, the fluctuations during the day. What's like the highest you've seen interest rates for consumer home loans fluctuate during a one-day period?
Oh, that's a great question. You have to go back a few years because in the last couple of years we've had some remarkably good stability.
Well, that's good.
But yeah, and that is good to know. But back in like 2005, 2006, we saw some days where I remember a day where rates went up 0.75% in a single day.
That's a lot.
And that was relative to a Fed statement. Or, we used to watch what the Fed would do in terms of raising or lowering interest rates. They haven't done that in some time. Obviously, the Fed funds rate has been stable. But when it wasn't, man, you could see some severe volatility on those occasions.
Was there volatility recently over this whole fiscal cliff issue?
Another great question. There was, and it was exacerbated by the fact that it played out over the holidays. So investors and the markets in general didn't know what to expect when they showed up for work in January. So managing that risk, great question. Yeah, absolutely. Managing that was important.
How are we doing now that we're into January?
We started off relatively where we left off in December, so net effect zero. But yesterday, an interesting thing happened where the Fed minutes were revealed, and some of the Fed players felt that the QE3 may not go on indefinitely, and they stated that, and that roiled the markets a little bit. So we're starting the year a little bit higher than we ended December. But for 2012, we ended up with an average rate of about 3.35% on a 30-year fixed loan.
Well, that's not
pretty
bad.
remarkable.
Fabulous.
Very good. Okay, we're going to cut to our third and final commercial break, and here's the trivia question. What famous comedian often would say, "I don't get no respect"? And when we come back, Robert's got some really, really interesting things that we have history about interest rates. So make sure you stay with us, and we will be right back. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Humph of Pacific Private Money, California's fastest growing private lender, and Robert Spinoza of RPM Mortgage. And Robert is going to... Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I got to get into the trivia question here.
Yeah.
What famous comedian would often say, "I don't get no respect"?
Rodney.
That's right.
Rodney
Guy with the
Dangerfield.
eyes.
That
Eyes.
is
Funny.
That's
correct.
good.
All right. And Robert, we promised the listeners when they came back from commercial break that you had some very interesting history to tell us.
But before we do that, I got to tell you that my favorite Rodney joke was he was going in for heart surgery, I think it was, and someone asked him on his way in. They said, he goes, if everything goes well, if everything goes well, I'll be out of here in a week. If everything goes poorly, I'll be out of here in 2 hours. Something like that. But anyway, Rodney
With a toe tag on.
Right? Yeah. So anyway, I was at this time of year. It's really interesting because I love reading predictions, and I love looking back at last year's prediction for where rates are going to be. And everybody, obviously, when they talk to me about locking a rate, they're going to ask, where do you see rates going? Normally in the short term. But so what I did is I went and I looked at Freddie Mac's 30-year fixed mortgage index, basically tracking the 30-year fixed loan since 1971.
Wow.
And it revealed a lot of really cool things. Probably the headline number and the one that makes everyone laugh. Rates peaked, 30-year fixed rates peaked in October of 1981. At anyone's guess?
18%.
18.45.
I remember.
Amazing. And that was the prime rate, right? Or
No, prime was 20,
prime was-
3/4. But 21.
Oh, okay.
So when you look at that, you go, okay, and we're obviously at the lows right now historically. So what we have to take into consideration with that, people going into escrow, looking at properties, saying, is this a good time to buy? Well, know that your 30-year fixed rate currently in the low threes is about 5% under the average over those 40 years, which is about 8.6%.
And
Okay.
the price of houses, has come down quite a bit.
That's a good point.
Not obviously from the 1940s.
We have to look at that
yeah.
relative to that. But the other things that I was really interested in knowing, a lot of people will look at their mortgage options and they'll be afraid of what could happen in the future. And what I found in that is when you look at, for example, over a decade, I was hard pressed in one instance in the 80s that the spread from high to low was 9%. But other than that, in the other decades, less than 5% or right around 5%. So you look forward 10 years and you say, well, what if rates are spread 5% from here? We're back at the 8s, which is the average. And obviously nobody wants to be paying 8 in this environment on a conventional.
Of course,
loan.
if they're earning 14% in their CDs,
different story, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think, and that's what a lot of people are looking ahead to, and that's why there's so many predictions out there. Just wait, interest rates are going to spike.
Right.
Because I know just from a prime rate perspective, if you go back 20, 25 years, the average prime rate was 6%.
Mm-hmm.
So and now it's 3.
Yeah.
And just. So it's, and you're looking at mortgage rates,
Right.
which are tracking in the same
You also
way.
have to look at the time period, right? If it stayed at 12% for how long? Is that the mean, modium,
Right.
median, mode, or mean?
Modium, like you used to
Modium,
Well, and that's something I looked at too, because when I looked at the year to year, so starting 2013 now, people saying, well, where could rates go? Well, that average in a calendar year is 1.25%. So if you look at the end of this year, would rates be at 2.5 or would they be at 4 3/4? But the important thing about it, whether it's either side of that or just out of it, know that you have sort of history on your side with that. You don't see these wild fluctuations. We're not going, historically speaking, we're not going from 3 to 18 this year.
Yeah.
You know, even despite all of the other things that could happen, you know, there's not a historical precedent for it.
Well, that's the good news, I think, is that, you know, the Fed's come out and basically said, look, our goal or our target's to hold rates steady
Right.
and low, you know, up until, well, I guess, didn't they say 2015?
Yeah.
But I guess that
was-
depends on also
Yeah,
the
the
employment rate,
right.
right? Because they have a
Right.
target employment rate. But what I thought was also interesting, because you brought in some other statistics, Rob, and that has to do with the fact that, and this is something we've talked about in the show over and over again, is that the banks are not lending at the rate they were lending,
Right.
you know, say in
The
2005.
pool is
when-
way smaller.
Right, so
Yeah.
anybody could get a loan in 2005. We've all talked about that. You know,
Right.
the old joke was if you could fog a mirror, you can get a bank loan, you can get 100% financing, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. But nowadays, the banks, I mean, the pendulum's really swung the other
Yeah.
direction. You've got some almost shocking statistics about the average loan that's closing today. And
Yeah.
what I thought was most interesting, and I'll just grab one of these, it says that the FICO scores on closed loans are averaging 750. This
startling.
was from November. FICO scores on denied loans averaged 707.
Right.
That's just stunning to me.
Now, what was, I mean, 707 is a pretty high score.
It is.
So
It's a
good score,
What was
yeah.
it denied? I mean, what else caused?
Well, you don't know the entire profile,
Yeah.
but you know, if I think the important thing to look at there is if you're saying 750 for approved and 707 for denied, well, you've got a 40-point difference there in what's happening in those 40 points. Is
Yeah.
it their debt ratio? Are they putting more down? Are they more creditworthy in general? Hard to interpret from that, but I think Mark's point is if you're denying 707s, you know, my God, because those people are for the most part entirely creditworthy.
Well, and then you look at the very first bullet point there, it says the refinance closing rate was 52% based on applications started 90 days prior.
Right.
Again, these are statistics from the month of
November.
November 2011. So,
2012.
and then, or 2012,
Yeah.
right? The closing rate on purchases was 60%. So that still seems to me, and again, I don't know how this bears out historically, but that sure seems like low percentages, low percentage likelihood of closing.
This is
on a
why
bank
all
loan.
cash buyers are going to get their.
Well, sure. No, and that's why, you know, people are going to hard money lenders like
Yeah.
Pacific Private
Yeah.
Money to get
Yeah.
their loans, because if you're only got a 60% chance of closing on a purchase, that's a 40% chance you might lose your deposit.
Right. And this is the kind of thing too.
It's crazy.
Looking at these numbers, for me, you know, who are these people working with? Because certainly
They're not working with Rob
They're not working-
Spinoza
they're
and
not working
RPM
with me.
Mortgage,
No,
that's for
absolutely
sure.
Well,
not.
here's the
because-
other question: are those personal residences or all
Yeah.
properties?
These are personal residences. All,
Okay.
yeah.
'Cause you don't do,
All
Mark doesn't do
residential.
residential,
yeah.
but it could be investors.
Yeah, it could be investors.
Okay,
Yeah.
those people. Could,
Not likely, though. I think the banks are so overwhelmed right now with purchase and refinance that they don't need to do investment property. If you get an investment property loan, it's more because you've got a personal relationship with your
I
regional
would agree
bank.
with that.
Okay, so the closing ratio would be even less then for investor.
It could be.
Probably.
To
To
break
mix
it
and
out of
mix.
that,
Yeah.
you know, hard to say, but I agree with you. Because they're a riskier loan inherently. So if you're not flying with a 707 on an investment property.
Flying with a 707, I like that. A Boeing 707.
You probably, to have a loan approved on an investment property, I would say the 750 average would have to be 20, 30 points higher
Yeah.
on that.
One other bullet
amazing.
point that stands out to me, Robin, and it'd be interesting to get your take on this. It says refis accounted for 68%
Mm-hmm.
of total production. So that's an astounding number. So, you know, a year from now,
Right.
when everybody's refied and if rates are still low, what I wonder is that what it's going to take for the banks to start loosening up their, you know, their.
We hope. Yeah, we hope. I mean, that dynamic, the refinance dynamic, is interesting to watch because certainly we've been in a refinance environment for darn near 10 years now, believe it or not, because rates have continued on a steady clip downward. Sure. So it's always been possible to refi, but at some point you run out of room to do that. Are we here now? We very well could be. And then what is the industry going to look like when that changes? How will it make up the production otherwise?
Yeah, so it's 70% roughly refi traffic right now. As that number dips down, one might expect, if you're going to predict and use a crystal ball, that the banks will loosen their lending criteria and maybe actually even begin to lend once more on a more meaningful basis to real estate investors. Meanwhile, us hard money lenders are going to enjoy the traffic because we're getting a lot of applications these days.
Right. It's hard to know for sure where the industry will go with a change in the interest rate dynamic, but what we've seen over the last few years has largely been tied to what has the purchase market done in the recent past. You were looking for a while looking into the abyss, 2008, 2009 with property.
Just to look off the side for just a quick minute. This is not my thought for the day. This is called the quote for the day. Okay, and I want you to tell me who said this. All right, the budget should be balanced. The treasury should be refilled. Public debt should be reduced. The officialdom should be tempered and controlled, and the assistance to foreign lands should be curtailed or. Darn it, it cut off a little bit here.
That'd be Taft.
Yeah, hold on. People must, again, learn to work instead of living on public assistance. You say it's Howard Taft, going back to 1919.
Probably Barry Obama.
No?
I'm going to go to Thomas Jefferson.
How about Cicero in 55 BC?
Well, if it's the Price is Right, I'm closest, right?
No, you're still over.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Officialdom, I haven't heard that one.
Well, that's why I was going to say I should have made it more. Of course, this is in Latin. I had to read it.
Yeah. Interpret it?
Yeah. Mark, what is going on real estate wise?
Well, anybody reading the papers this past week again, it's been more of the same. Prices surprisingly are going up in most markets faster and further than I think any of us predicted a year ago.
Right, exactly.
Because I know myself, I'm in the market looking to move up and looking maybe to buy a home in another neighborhood in the Bay Area, and I pretty much thought, earlier in 2012 that I had at least a good year or two that prices were going to remain stable, and now all of a sudden I'm going, crud, I'm watching prices in markets go up 10-15%, and that's assuming you can even find something you like that isn't being bid on by 20 other people.
Right.
So it's a wild market right now, and I think a lot of us in real estate are waiting for more inventory to be released by the banks. Please release more inventory, because that's I think it's a false balance that we're experiencing right now. The increase in prices. I don't think it's.
I wonder if they'll open the floodgates to the banks. They start opening up a little bit. They see the price, and then they just flood it. Who knows?
Yeah, not me. I don't know, and I don't know what motivates them to view.
I don't think any of us know. That's the problem.
All right, guys, we're going to cut to our thoughts for the day.
Right.
But by the way, you remember talking about mean, modium? You said modium?
No,
right?
Imodium.
I know. I was going to ask you, how's your plumbing? Okay, thoughts for the day. If it weren't for the fact that the TV and the refrigerator are so far apart, I wouldn't get any exercise at all. And if at first you don't succeed, keep on sucking till you do succeed. Okay, tune in to in a couple of weeks, because we're going to be preempted because of Cal basketball. Tune in a couple of weeks to The Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away 9 more free vacations for answering trivia questions, and a Happy New Year to you all.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long.